Hi, this is Jasleen. I am going to demonstrate an analysis tool which runs on a Node.js application called Checkbox.io. This analysis tool does various tasks of reporting metrics like number of long methods in the JavaScript code, or in case the big O complexity of a method is greater than 3, and so on. This is the Ansible playbook that is written, which is responsible for building this checkbox.io code on a Jenkins server. It also installs and brings up the Jenkins server beforehand. It will copy the code into Jenkins and start running the build. The should fail in the end in case these conditions are not met. So I'll go ahead and run this playbook and we'll see how it goes. These are tasks for adding certain dependencies that are required by Checkbox.io, as well as for installing Jenkins. As you see, I need Java installed. I need to set up the license for the same, and also an Nginx server. It goes ahead and downloads Jenkins. There is a shell command for Jenkins which needs to update the security parameters of the server too. These are the other tasks where it installs Jenkins finally on the remote node, and it will start the service. After this, I restart Jenkins since my JVM arguments were modified. I have a pause. This pause is there so that my Jenkins server gets enough time to boot up again, so that my other tasks can proceed after this. Well, after that, as you can see, it gets the Jenkins jar. This Jenkins jar is the CLI for Jenkins, which also has to be placed in the workspace for the Jenkins server. After this, I install the Git plugin. Since the code that I'm running is taken from a Git repo, I need to have an appropriate plugin which will be in Jenkins so that it can pick up the code and start the build. After making these modifications, as always, I restart Jenkins and pause for the time for it to come up. The next task would be to install the dependencies on the node, on the remote node itself. This is because I have my code installed on the node and it needs these dependencies to run that repo. After that, I am going to clone the Git repo, copy the analysis tool which is in my local machine as yet onto the remote node, so that Jenkins can pick it up from there and start the job. Now the job has been started on Jenkins. I'll go to the Jenkins GUI and see how it ran. This is the IP address of my remote node. Jenkins runs on port 8080. Test 1 is the name of the build that I ran just now. To see the status of the build, I see it is red, but we need to see why it failed, so I browse to the console output. I see that my analysis.js reported various metrics for my JavaScript code. Things like what sort of max conditions I had in my if statements, whether my function lengths were too long, and the big O complexity being greater than 3 or not. I see that my my build was marked as a failure since one of these conditions was not met. The condition that failed here was function length being greater than 100. That is why I marked my build as a failure. So this is how I demonstrated how my analysis tool ran on all the JavaScript files in Checkbox.io and reported the build as failure if one of these conditions was not met. I hope this was useful to you. Thank you.